Apex Base, and today I'd like to talk to you about static line. We've seen some right out dangerous techniques of attaching static lines in the field, and so we wanted to take an opportunity to show you some of the right ways and then discuss why some of the systems that are being used out there aren't the best way to go. We'll also show you some drop tests that we've done to evaluate and share some of that information with you. First off, we'll take a standard 9-foot bridle with a pilot chute, and the way we'd recommend rigging such a system would be to fold the bridle at the pin, even with the base of the pin, even with the base of the pilot chute, to find that halfway point. Once you've located that halfway point, we will simply do a overhand knot to create a small loop that we will be able to attach our first piece of brake cord. It's basically a small cord. We use a Milspec 80-pound brake cord. Now this is 80 pounds in a static environment. We'll talk about that in a little bit more in a minute. Once we have this location, we will pass the brake cord through that halfway point, and then we're also going to want to take it around a solid point. I'm using a carabiner as an example. It is a good way to attach to an object. You want to make sure that it's nice and clean and free of any burrs. You don't want to cut through anything that you're going to attach your brake cord to. You don't want to have a cutting action. You want to make sure you get the full effect of that 80 pounds. Once we're here, we will do a surgeon's knot, which is 1, 2 passes around with a locking knot of a square knot. So what will happen in this situation is the jumper would be allowed to fall 4.5 feet before loading the first piece of brake cord. We will take a second piece of brake cord and take it out to the end of the bridle and attach it to the same point. Now this does two things. It gives us a backup of the first, but it also gets that pilot chute out of the way and in a controlled area, so you don't have to worry about it getting wrapped around a foot or an arm, which we've seen problems with. So now I have two independent brakes. The first one is at the halfway point, then the second one would be back by the pilot chute. When you go to attach whatever point you're going to attach onto the object, you're going to make sure that's a secure point, whether it's a rock bolt that's been properly set or a hand railing or some type of a railing. You have to make sure that it's a permanent piece of the structure and in no way will fail when you load it. So this is how we would recommend you rig a static line setup. And now a little bit more about brake cord. We do use a Milspec 80-pound brake cord. Okay, it's designed to brake at 80 pounds. Now this is under a static load environment. So literally I could have 80 pounds sitting on the ground and be able to lift it off the ground. However, I can brake the same piece of brake cord with only 5 pounds. Wow. From 80 pounds now to 5 pounds? The difference is I add dynamics. If I drop that 5-pound weight a distance of 9 feet, the length of a bridle, this brake cord will brake every single time. So only 5 pounds, dropping 9 feet, this will brake every single time. That might become a little scary when you consider most parachutes on the market are in excess of 10 pounds. So something half that weight will break this, and that should be concerning. It is dangerous the way some people are rigging their setup to do a static line jump. They're getting too much distance, too much speed, too much dynamics before they load the brake cord. The system that we showed you where you tie in halfway is going to be a much better way to go. It reduces the possibility of a premature breakage. We want this brake cord to hold until you're all the way through line stretch. Okay, we don't want the pilot chute to have to do any work to get you to line stretch. The idea is to get you completely through container opening, line stretch, you're loading the entire system. Then we want things, the brake cord, to fail and allow you to be released from the object. Some of the other methods that we've seen out there that we believe don't add any benefit to this system, in fact, they're just giving you kind of false hope, if you will, is a system that, again, goes to the end of the bridle at the pilot chute and has either a single piece, dangerous, don't do it, and we've seen some people add an additional piece, so they've got one that's in a tight loop and one that's in a larger loop. Well, our tests have shown that that doesn't add any benefit, doesn't reduce the possibility of a premature breakage at all. The 5-pound weight will still bust through both of those if it's allowed to fall that 9 feet. So in our test here, you're going to see as we drop this weight, it's only a 5-pound weight. We're going to allow it to fall the full 9 feet, and you'll see how it breaks. And dropping in 3, 2, 1. That was only 5 pounds, and it was able to go through an 80-pound piece of brake cord. And now here we're going to show you the technique that is becoming more and more common, but we still think is just dangerous. It doesn't really add anything. This one has a tight piece of brake cord tied tightly at the 9-foot mark, and then it also has a loose piece tied at the 9-foot mark. And we're going to drop it 5 pounds, the full 9 feet, with 2 pieces of cord, and you notice that it goes through both of those. Really no added benefit to having that second piece. Now let's change that system and allow it only to fall 4.5 feet. And now here we go. We'll take that 5-pound weight, we drop it 4.5 feet, and you see that the brake cord holds. We've looked into a couple different methods to reduce the premature breakage. One method that we just described is to shorten the distance fallen. So we know that we can reduce the dynamic forces by reducing the distance the jumper falls. That's shortening the bridle to that 4.5 foot mark and having 2 pieces of brake cord, one at the 4.5 and one at the 9. Well, another method to do that would be install some type of a shock absorber. We're talking dynamic forces. So if we install a shock absorber in there somewhere, that would also reduce the force, the dynamic force that brake cord is feeling. We've worked with Thrill Inc. In developing this system, and basically this is a shock absorber that we are using for static line. It has the 2 pins. This would be the location for the pilot chute, and the canopy would be attached right here. So just inside the container would have a shock absorber. So this will absorb the dynamic load that brake cord feels as the canopy is getting loaded out of the container. By using a shock absorber style device, as I have here, we've been able to double the load that's required to break the brake cord. So by implementing the 2 systems we've talked about, which is one, shortening the bridle, and using a shock absorber, we can feel much more comfortable that a jumper's going to get all the way through line stretch before that brake cord is failing. So in conclusion, if you're using a static line system, gather more information, especially if your system involves a 9-foot bridle attaching a single or even a double piece of brake cord at the end. These, we believe, are operating in a very dangerous manner. So check us out at apexbase.com if you have any more questions, and we'll see you at the exit point.